meeting to order at 5:31. First off, any adjustments to the agenda?
And no adjustments to the agenda.
Okay, no adjustments to the agenda. And regarding the approval of minutes from January 3rd, I imagine we'll have to push that till next week, right? Because you weren't here, so we'll have to.
So with that statement, we're going to presume that a week from tonight, we're having a special meeting. And at that point, we'll have to make sure we finalize some other things.
We were probably planning on doing it anyway, right?
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, so there will most likely be a meeting January 24th. We're fine, we'll take care of that. All right. Can't see. Any public comments that are not currently on the agenda? Anyone? No? All right, then we'll move on to the items, beginning with the ordinances policies for animal control.
So,
Where do we go?
quite an extensive package provided to the board of the policy, flurry of emails, copies of letters to the editor in the paper and whatnot regarding an event that happened December 29th in the morning. And was followed up on by Ian Tuttle, and which was originally reported as Cuddle. I know he's smaller, and that's cute, but no, his name is Tuttle. And then I've been visited by several residents and had several phone calls with the press regarding these events. And so it is on the agenda primarily at the request of trying to have this board be brought up to date on what they have for information. And the public wants to speak on it.
Is there anyone here that's wishes to speak on this issue?
Well, I had,
Please say your name, please.
Jared Rolston. I live here in town, in the village, and I submitted this email. I don't know if everyone had a chance to read it, but it addresses the lack of a response for animals that endanger or attack or destroy property or other animals. So what I did was I had written up a response that the town could use. So this is sort of an outline that you could adopt if you choose as a warning for any kind of animal that, for any owner of an animal that does attack another animal. This is not necessarily for attack on another person, but for attack of property damage or another animal being damaged. And it just states, and it's all based on state the legislation that allows the towns to determine their own recourse for such an attack. And it just states that it says that as a result of the incident, I think it's the date at the location, it is the opinion of the Putney Town Manager and the Select Board that your dog or dog's name can be implied, poses a danger to the community, and under the authority of Title 20, the Internal Security and Public Safety, Part 8 Animals, you are hereby given notice that any further damage or injury caused by your animals may result in a civil fine of up to $500, financial liability for any damage resulting. A court may also authorize the seizure and disposition of your dog if the court determines that they pose a continuing threat to public safety. We strongly recommend that you take steps to secure your pet at all times to avoid further complaints and/or legal action. And that's something the Select Board could submit to a person who has had an incident with their pet. Because I don't think there's anything in place, because I know that this thing happened a few weeks ago, and then last year, I had ducks, domestic ducks that were attacked by a dog that had run loose, killed, and then it happened again. And the first time I came to the town manager, the previous one, and I said to her that this had happened, and I got no response. Nothing happened. When it happened again, I came back to her, and I said, this has happened again. This dog is a menace. And she said, now which dog is that? So nothing was done. So
you're saying in this, excuse me, that after the second incident, it would go to the court?
After the second incident, she would have been, after the first incident, she'd be put on notice.
On
The
notice.
owner of the dog would be on notice that any further action,
So another
destruction,
incident would then
yes, she
move
could be
forward.
fined a civil fine of up to $500 and civil court, small claims court she could be liable for damages. So I also have submitted my intention, if need be, to act as animal control officer for the town. Because I don't think there is one.
Not for years.
Well, I volunteered my services. I have a dog. I'm, sympathetic to people's feelings about their pets. I had ducks. So I'm an animal lover, but I also understand the responsibilities of being a pet owner and the care that they require.
I just want to comment that I'm surprised that your duck incident wasn't handled differently. I mean, typically, even though we've had a lack of an animal control officer, we've usually, via the town manager or some methods, been able to at least address people's issues. So I apologize for that. I don't remember hearing about it.
I didn't bring it to the select board. I brought it to the town manager, and apparently she did not bring it up.
And typically, we don't necessarily hear about animal issues unless they're sort of ongoing. In that situation, it sounds like it was at least partly ongoing.
Well, there's where there's a need for an animal control officer.
Absolutely.
She could have, addressed it to him or her.
Yeah.
And then they could have dealt with it.
Yeah, no, and we have had relatively recently an animal control officer. Henry Farnham was doing it for several years. He decided not to do it, and we've had people, it's one of those sort of odd positions that's been surprisingly hard to keep somebody doing it. People come and they'll do it for 2 months and then disappear. And so it's just been a challenge, and not for lack of trying, but just one of those things. So
It's a voluntary position, I guess it's hard. But also, as you mentioned Henry Farnham was the animal control officer, and there's a letter here that you got, I guess it's from Sarah Cooper-Ellis.
yeah.
And she poses this question, which I think this should be made clear, that she says, if the relationship between the town and the sheriff's deputy have failed to provide Putney with services governing the domestic animals, I think she's implying that this is something that the police should be dealing with, and it's a civil matter and should not be a police issue until it becomes a criminal issue. So, having a police officer do it, I think, is not the best way to
It
go.
depends. I mean, whenever there's any sort of a threat to a person, then the police are automatically involved.
This incident
Sort of falls outside of the jurisdiction of that, and it falls into our town ordinance, but we don't, as it's written, there's not much sort of enforcement teeth behind a single animal-on-animal attack, unfortunately.
According to the state bylaws, it is a domestic, it's a civil matter, the town should address.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, Louise.
I
sorry.
hadn't seen his proposal before, but I approve of it. I would think, because of what happened in the way Sarah was questioned, well, what do you want us to do? And then at the time that her dog was attacked, or after her dog was attacked, the fact was that the owners did try and control the dog and were totally incapable of controlling the dog. And so when it says secure pet, I would also ask if you would add and muzzle your pet.
I think
Because-
muzzling might be something that the town could impose on its
secure and muzzle.
case-by-case basis.
Right, okay.
You know, yes.
Because that's, to me, I mean, this dog, and as we have this increase in dogs that were raised as blood sport dogs, pit bulls, etc., there's a sharp increase in these dogs and fatalities towards that children and old people throughout, New England has risen dramatically as a result of this in the last decade. And the fact that these dogs are, often like these pit bulls, they're between, 60 and 100 pounds of muscle, and the owners just can't control them.
There are
So-
on average 12 deaths a year to people
Oh, yes,
country.
and well,
by dogs.
but it's gone up dramatically.
Specifically.
70% are pit bull or Rottweiler.
Yeah, right, and it's dramatic. It's in really the last decade, and there's a lot about this. But the fact that people they say, well, I had it on a leash, or she was asked afterwards not to let it out without being on a leash, and in fact, that was not. She couldn't control it, and at least I feel that they should be muzzled. I know when I walk on Putney Mountain, sometimes there are people with pit bulls who they also can't control. The dogs are walking the people, not the people walking the dog. And so if you're in public with an animal that you can't control, I think at least it should be muzzled. So that's
Well, I would think that could be added.
right.
Particularly, I mean, it is in the Putney nuisance ordinance also, recommendation of muzzling an animal if necessary. Louise, you had something too?
Yeah, I wanted to address three parts of the situation that's arisen. First of which has to do with the lack of an animal control officer, which is her name?
Jared Rolston.
Jared brought up. I heard by talking to the temporary manager, Chip, that people have applied, but they haven't had the skills, if I'm correct, to be hired on as a volunteer. I want a clarification about that. The second is that the second part of point one is that the ordinance of the town say that if there is no animal control officer specifically in that position, any one of these entities can be it: the Putney Health Officer, the Deputy Officer, the Constable, the Town Manager, the Sheriff, or the Wyndham County Sheriff, and that just leaves it all going around. I think one of Sarah's basic complaints about the weekend that this happened was there was nobody willing to deal with it for a couple of days. Happened to be a weekend. Who was in charge? I don't know if the sheriff has been designated by the select board so that we know, for example, call the sheriff. That put the investigation way behind. So that's the first situation. Let's get an ACO on board or designate somebody so the townspeople know exactly who to call in the situation. The others are just, there are gaps in the current ordinances relating, I think one of them has to do with, there is a fine, a penalty for the first incident of any sort, which is $50. Again, the town managers told me, well, why impose a fine? It's really not going to do anything. So there needs to be some tightening up. What's the purpose of a fine? Is it a slap on the wrist? The town certainly isn't fully enriched by a $50 fine. The other is
You
that,
can fine up to $500.
is that state law or
Yes.
ordinance? Because they
State law.
perhaps need to
State law.
be coordinated a little bit better.
That's on my.
And then, personally, I'm leery of, there were
Civil
two
fine.
dogs, by the way. One owned by the renter on Kimball Hill, one owned by a friend of hers who was in that apartment at least that day. So as far as I know, the sheriff's follow-up report has not reported on whether that dog number 2, the visiting dog, was registered. I think it was cleared of rabies. But I don't know where it was registered or if it's coming back to visit this house on Kimball Hill. But you put 2 of these dogs together, there's a slight increase in likelihood, I would think, of trouble. So everybody from nursery school kids to kids coming from school to people walking their dogs, visitors to town, are we really comfortable knowing that there's a dog that's killed one small dog in an apartment that is on a sidewalk where people walk by in great numbers every day? So there are gaps. I don't know where things stand now. Maybe you can give us an update. Now I hear there was inaction last year. Again, there was no ACO, animal control officer. So what has the town done in terms of, or the select board? I don't know if it's which one of you it is. So there are those shortcomings. And then I guess the third point is that Mike Maricki, our state legislator, is working at the state level to get a tighter set of ordinances at that level that can either trickle down or that we can tag along to. So there's things to look at, things to do. I hope you can grapple with it and even consider this gentleman as a ACO so that we have somebody to call. Thanks.
Thank you.
And just as,
Can you respond to her before you take another question? Respond to her.
Regarding those 3 points?
Yes, please. As best you can.
Well, there may well be gaps in the ordinance. We reviewed this ordinance and adopted it in 2013, and I don't actually remember whether we made significant changes to it at that time. I don't think we did. I think that was essentially a bookkeeping type of exercise. As far as not having an animal control officer, as I said, it's been hard to keep somebody in that position. We have tried to encourage the Wyndham County Sheriff's Department to take that under their, to me, it's sort of surprising that the Sheriff's Department doesn't take that role on, given that they're a county-wide organization. Not that we shouldn't have somebody local also, but I think that would be a logical place to have an animal control officer that does county-wide animal control work. As far as having somebody to call sort of at any given time, that's easier said than done. It's not that we don't have sort of a sequence for that, but the health officer is also the fire chief who may or may not be available. Select board, I've gone out when I've gotten a phone call about a rabid raccoon. We all try and do our part, but it's not, again, it's just been one of those surprisingly challenging things to keep somebody who will do that. We have had a stipend available to people who are interested in it, and certainly, Jared, I don't know what your level of commitment might be, but we also are more than happy to give somebody, one of the challenges of this also is that my experience more often than not is that these are almost always as much about the owners and their relationships with their neighbors and the neighborhood. And I wouldn't say that about this incident, but when we've had animal control issues that have been significant sort of ongoing problems, it's usually about neighbor disputes, honestly. It's usually one dog versus another dog. And putting somebody in that situation when they're not trained for it is something that's hard to justify as a select board, to send somebody out. If you haven't been trained, to send somebody out to a situation where there are 2 angry neighbors because somebody's dog got bitten is a pretty volatile situation, and we prefer to have the Sheriff's Department included in that when it's that kind of situation. So
yeah, I disagree. I think that if it was me involved in a dispute with my neighbor over a domestic issue like that, a civil issue, and a cop showed up, I'd say, what are you doing here? This is not your purview. This is not criminal. You don't have any authority here, and he'd have to say, you're right. It's a civil case, you'd have to take it to a judge, have a judge adjudicate the situation. There's nothing he can do in his law enforcement capacity. So I think it's a mistake to have a cop involved.
Except, I agree with you as far as civil versus criminal is concerned, you're right. But I also think that somebody who doesn't really have some significant training, these things can get pretty darn ugly. Surprisingly so.
If there's something that can be a written complaint that's issued to the offender saying that they are liable for civil fines, for a fine of up to $500 and any damages done, and it's in writing and it has all the legislative backing, a lot of reading they can do, I think that would help. So, there is legal recourse for your neighbor.
Yeah, I can't emphasize enough how complicated these things get. We've sat through numerous events where you have one neighbor and it becomes explosive and you don't want to be in the middle of it if you don't know why you're in the middle of it. And that's the kind of thing, I'm not saying I'm not trying to say we shouldn't be doing something about it and that we shouldn't be, handing, tickets per se, etc. But people get really charged about this stuff. And when you start wandering onto somebody's property, telling them that you're the local animal control officer, we had a situation not that long ago, a couple years ago, where a guy posted a picture of a weapon on his front lawn and said, basically, stay the F off my property or I will deal with you.
There is a allowance to go on property under the law.
I know, I'm just telling you, Jared, the reality versus, it's one thing to be, when it's Henry Farnham and he's got 25 years of experience as a cop, going out and walking onto somebody's property versus I'm not trying to argue that we shouldn't be doing this. I'm just telling you that my experience with it is that it's way more volatile than one thinks it might be when it comes to animals. And so one has to be very cautious what they're entering into. And that's where some training is very helpful, but also just being very aware of the people involved, etc. It can turn ugly quickly, but yeah.
Can I advocate, can I speak to the issue of training, because I think it's really important, and I'm pretty sure I did see in the ordinances that there was a place whereby that is available.
Yeah.
So whoever comes on as the animal control officer, I believe that should be a mandatory piece of it.
Yes.
Can you clarify whether the sheriff has said, no, never, I won't do this, or only if, why isn't that decided?
Basically been as available kind of thing. I mean, if it's a criminal thing, then it's obviously a criminal thing. But if it's a civil thing and they're busy with other stuff, then they just don't come. And they're not required to. So that's been sort of a mixed bag as to, I mean, they're always as helpful as they're able to be, but they're not always available to be helpful in all situations. So.
I just have a question. If a dog attacks a human, does that then become a criminal?
That's a criminal.
Automatically.
Yeah.
We don't have anything for dog on dog or animal on animal.
And that's part of that is state statute. I mean, that's statutory, that it's, animal on animal is a little, there's just less teeth behind it. And not that our ordinance can't and or doesn't address that, but the ability to enforce it is less.
And can you clarify if there are qualifications you're looking for? And my question might go to you, Chip, but saying that people have applied but they're not qualified. How many of those and what's lacking in their resume?
Since August 23rd, there's only been one person who has submitted multiple times, and they started long before I actually got here. And they have submitted lengthy documents to the board. And basically, from the connections outside of the town of Putney, we have been cautioned not to hire that person.
We've also, over the years, had a number of people, as I said, who have come for a very short period of time. We've had, most recently, actually, a guy who came and he was ready to do it, he was ready to sign up. We agreed that we would sign him up, and he never showed up to another meeting. So, it's just, it's been an ongoing frustrating process. Yeah.
I went online before I came down, and I noticed that there were actually a lot of vacant posts here
Yes.
in Putney. And so I know that it's a little off topic for now, but I'd like you guys to put aside some time to address that for maybe town meeting, where you could help bring people in to, because we're all there, to talk about it a little bit. And I was surprised at how many positions were available. Probably this isn't going to be a very popular statement in this room right now, but I know the dog involved. Not personally, like friendship, but the dog lived up by my house. We walked the loop. The dog came out, met our dogs for a couple years. We've never had an incident. I don't understand. The other dog who lives on Kimball Hill has been the sweetest dog, has played with my poodle, has, just out near the co-op, where she's walked the dog. I think that when dogs hit a certain level of stimulation, that something just clicks in their brains, and their prey drive or their attack drive just takes over. And I've had friends say to me, my dachshund would have joined in on that fight. I watched a fight at the park go from one dog being a jerk, and a dog turned to get rid of him, and all of a sudden there were 8 dogs in the mix. It's a very unfortunate thing, and I feel terrible. I think the whole town is just heartbroken by what has happened, and but it's more than just a pit bull problem. Pit
I
bulls
don't think
are-
anyone's saying that.
Yeah,
I think people are just saying that there is a leash law in town,
And so-
and if she had it on a leash,
Yeah, well,
then
and,
this would have not
right,
happened.
I understand that. I'm not disputing
Yeah, it's not
that.
that the
But
breed of the
I,
dog.
is anything gonna happen now to these dogs? And to her and to the other owner? To the owner of the other dog, the first dog who instigated, is that $50 fine gonna be imposed? Is the town gonna send them a letter? What is this follow-up now that this one incident has happened? We can talk about future, and what you put together is really awesome. And I thank you very much, and for volunteering, that's really great.
I too know the woman with the dog she lives across the street from me. And I've seen her with that dog on a leash. Normally, I don't know I wasn't there for this incident.
I wasn't there to see it. All I have is hearsay.
Yeah.
So
I knew,
I'm not gonna go there.
Sarah too.
Yep. To say that this incident's just gonna come and go and not be addressed by the town at all because an ordinance wasn't strong enough or written the right way, I think isn't doing enough for.
Yeah, I don't think any of us feel
So-
that way.
so what are you guys gonna do?
Ian Tuttle took it on, and once the Wyndham County Sheriffs take it on, then it's their responsibility. I don't know where.
But we're the town, and so how is
Well,
you guys as our voice?
Right.
So what,
Going to address her and say, hey, this isn't okay.
so the ordinance does speak to the deputy sheriff as being an authorized agent of the town to enforce this ordinance. So Ian Tuttle was that. He was working, stating, and commenting on behalf of the town.
Okay.
So the town's voice was through the Windham County Sheriff Deputy, and he's authorized by the ordinance to enforce the ordinance. So on the 29th of December, I was not in the office the entire day. I actually learned of this event on Monday when I came back to work. You know what these are? I didn't get called because Ian Tuttle was doing it, handling it, which by ordinance he's authorized to do. On Saturday, he did interview and contact Heather. Got the story between the two dogs. Did learn that Heather's was registered and the other dog was not. Did learn that both had their rabies vaccinations. And the ordinance is very clear of what we can do, take, destroy, control for an unlicensed dog whose rabies condition is unknown. And the rabies condition was known. So instructions to the owner and instructions to the owner of what I would call the instigating dog, lived further up the hill, were that the dogs were not to be out unless they were on a leash and they were only to be out to go to the bathroom. Otherwise, they were confined to their space until they are spoken to again by Ian Tuttle on behalf of the town. They were not told to be muzzled. They were confined to home. So they were contacted by the town through the ordinance by representation. And that all happened before I even knew this incident took place.
Right, I think one thing that concerned those of us, because there's so many small children, that she was told she could take her dog out on a leash to go to the bathroom, but she was not told to muzzle it. And
Correct.
so that was one of the things that very day was very concerned us a lot.
And when or how or under what circumstances will Tuttle talk to her again? You said they're confined until further spoken to, I believe.
Correct.
So how does that work?
Well, we're here, and so unless there's a consensus of the board to take further action, then they probably won't ever get spoken to again. The dogs are told to be kept under control and confined.
So you're assuming they'll follow the,
I think she's moved. She's not around.
Who?
This Heather, I don't think she's gonna live where she's been living. I haven't seen her.
I mean, on the day I learned on a Monday, the landlord of Heather was in my office when the story came in. So the landlord knew of the situation. So there were many parties in communication.
And the landlord has the ability to enforce his own tenant, whatever his contract is.
She let her move in with a dog, and it's.
Well,
Yes.
my understanding is that the agreement was that she was allowed to have a dog in the apartment, and that she was responsible for having that dog under control, but the second dog apparently was not supposed to be in the apartment, but that's actually hearsay, I don't know that, but, no, I mean, I think that, we didn't have a meeting last week because two of us were sick, and so we haven't really had an opportunity to discuss this that much beyond what we're discussing right now. It was my assumption that Ian would follow up on this. I don't know whether he has or not. Again, when it comes to the Windham County Sheriff's ability to do that kind of thing, that's sort of a judgment call on his part, but we can certainly ask him to check on the situation and make sure that it's been handled sort of as appropriately as possible. But I think that, to your point, very clearly we need to have a different situation going forward, and we've been trying to have a different situation. It just hasn't worked. What we need to do is to figure out how to make it work, and
I think
it's
written
been,
warning would be the first thing.
yeah,
What's that?
A written warning to the dog owner
Yeah,
would be the first thing to do.
which I think, I mean, I'm assuming
within our
it was,
It's not within this ordinance.
Yeah.
You can issue a civil fine for first offense of $50 with a waiver down to 25. Should they not pay that, then we can incur attorney fees to pursue it through Wyndham Superior Court. And so, why would you issue and chase something unless it's substantial amounts of money? It's not cost effective.
Yeah, under Title 20,
Again, you're referring to state statute.
state statute that which gives the towns
Absolutely.
power to enforce.
And now, one says 50 locally, one says up to 500.
Civil penalty up to $500.
Yeah. So it's nice to quote, but it's not here. And this could be made to match that.
Yeah.
So the discussion in my mind is we are learning all of these nuances that are now either changed since this was adopted, and with the current rep saying he wants to introduce even more legislative action. What we have here really ties our hands and is not a cost-effective approach to try to deal with the issue. I do want to recognize that Heather did, in fact, pay the vet bill for the animal that was destroyed, if you will. And so in my eyes, she had paid.
Yeah,
And so the $50 is really meaningless.
I agree.
However, it does mean that we don't have record of a first offense. Because the second offense is, $100. And the third offense is $200.
although in theory, Ian certainly,
Ian has.
right, I mean, the Wyndham County Sheriffs would have record of the
Yes.
incident report.
So-
But if a warning was not, if an incident warning was not issued, then
Yeah,
that would,
It's not
So-
right.
so,
no, definitely
not.
No, that's what I was saying about, we just didn't meet last week, so that just was circumstance,
right.
but.
And so the approach of Ian, he came in and talked to me on Monday as well. And my discussion with him about the $50 civil fine, did I want him to write a ticket? And I said, it doesn't make sense to me to write a ticket. That we could be spending $500, $600, $700 on an attorney to get. That doesn't make sense to me.
But we won't get it anyway.
Right,
We'll pay an attorney, I'll tell you.
well, but,
I won't get paid. We had somebody on Pine Banks Road. We never got paid.
no, that was the one I was
Yeah.
referring to
Yeah.
before,
So-
threatening situations. No, and I don't think, that our inability to, enforce and or collect those should prevent us from writing those warnings, because, if nothing else, it's
It's a
a
document.
document that has issued that warning, and whether there's a penalty included or not, and or whether a penalty is collected. I mean, there are plenty of people who would pay a penalty because they're gonna pay a penalty. There's plenty of others who aren't. But, again, it gives us documentation, and having taken an action, and then when it comes back to that the second time
We have
around,
reference.
then we have reference to it. So I think that's important to do.
I did state, I can't remember if it was to someone here or not, I know I had said it to the reformer, that one incident does not a vicious dog make.
And that's
That's right, that's why I
trying to
said, my thing I wrote up, it's like, you are now considered to own a dangerous animal. Any further incidences will result in these penalties.
Yeah.
$500 fine, civil damages. So, yeah, right, so, things happen, right, people get crazy. Break out of, jump out of a car or run out the door, which may have been what happened in this case.
It seems like it,
Yeah.
hard to, I mean, like you
I
said,
don't think she,
the dog seemingly was not threatening before that particular incident, but I don't personally know the dog, so I don't know.
So I have ongoing, I'll just name Cooley Hollow Road. A neighbor with a dog that is behind another house, in which a single elderly woman lives in the front house, and the dog barks constantly while the owner is gone. The individual in the back house is a convicted felon, who upon hearing about the complaint being handled by the Windham County Sheriff's Office, proceeds to go out and discharge firearms. So this is something you're more than willing to just simply step into? I don't think so. The sheriff goes,
Calling the sheriff.
that is a nuisance, that is this ordinance, that is a $50 offense. It's the same ordinance to apply to that situation, which is ongoing and has been since before I got here and continues once every 3 to 4 weeks. That's an ongoing situation that the sheriff has incident reports of. Is
In that
it,
case, a registered letter.
yeah, but of, you're violating the nuisance. That's not your dog is vicious, it's not your dog is deemed dangerous. It's nuisance. So you've addressed exactly one condition, an actual dangerous dog, when most of our conditions are like, he said, they're nuisance. It's just, you know, the dog comes over and defecates on my lawn. I really don't want that to happen anymore. And that's a nuisance violation. So,
That isn't there a town ordinance for fine for not picking up after your dog?
yeah, in public right of way.
That's, and that's only
It's all
within,
there.
I think that's only within the village.
Well, within
Yes,
public
right.
right of way, dog control areas is defined
Was it 25 feet? Yeah.
Yeah.
In the center of the road.
within the public right of way.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't tell you gotta go on a private property and take care of something. Other circumstances in which would be a nuisance or even the death of an animal, a horse walking down the street that kicks a dog and kills it. You're suggesting I muzzle a horse and or take charge of the horse and destroy it. It wasn't intentional, it may not, you can get into writing something that's very good for one case, does not apply.
I think that, in that case, I think the dog owner would take that horse owner to small claims court and get damages for the dog.
Potentially. Yeah,
But this
I
is
guess-
the ordinance we have for animal
That's what-
control.
yes, That's what you have to say in this case, the town doesn't have a recourse, but you do.
We do have a recourse.
Well, you
It would
know,
be animal on animal.
yeah,
You're continuing that we only have dogwood teeth, and we have other animals that are here, a beautiful horse farm, without
Okay,
intention,
okay, but with
creating
this
death
letter,
of another animal.
with this letter, a warning letter of some sort, not, you know, just like this one, it could say horse instead of dog. You give that to the owner and to the victim, and she takes that letter to court. She has a letter from the town saying the horse is a danger. She'll have no trouble collecting. And there's satisfaction for the
When you're
victim.
speaking about that, the warning that might deal with the second incident, I just urge you to consider whether or not the one bite free tradition in Vermont still is worth following.
well, that's, as of right now, that's statutory, so
Yeah.
that's not up to us. I mean, that's what
One bite to another animal.
Mike has been
Yeah.
trying
So,
to address.
Could you explain to me what that is, what Mike's trying to get through?
Well, Mike, it sounded like I've only read the newspaper article, so I haven't talked to Mike about it, but it sounded to me like he submitted, but I don't think it was entertained, an article or a statutory change last year that would essentially change that situation. That it would be that even on a first bite, it rises to a criminal level. That just gives you more enforcement ability. You know, for us, given when we don't have an animal control officer, still enforcement as an issue, but it would allow statutorily to take those steps and to include it in an ordinance that otherwise we can't make our own laws that aren't approved by state statute. So
Up to the level of a state law, and this is below the level right now of
Right.
the information that's been provided. We could have increased this fine to $500. We could have removed the steps, $50, $100, $200, and just said, an incident is an incident.
Yeah, I don't think that's, no, I think this is supersedes whatever that is. This, Title 20 just doesn't mention anything about steps.
And so, let's play the devil's advocate. This ordinance is enforceable by local civil action by a non-police officer.
Right.
What you're pointing at,
Or
This
police
says-
officer, right.
This, Title 20 says, when the legislative body or officer has reasonable grounds to believe that a person has violated a provision of this chapter under this purview, that you can define whatever, A, B, C, all these other things. Officer meaning officer of the town, not officer, a police officer, a town officer.
And/or a police officer who's in our employ. So it could be either or, but I guess my recommendation in the interest of sort of how to continue from here would be that, Jared, we would need a written something from you saying that you would be interested in being the animal. Right, no, I know, I don't know, I didn't look at it closely enough to know whether it says that you're
That's the
actually
first-
asking to be
yeah,
that
the first section already here.
person, okay. Then the other, if we were to have an animal control officer, i.e. yourself or somebody else, my recommendation would be that that person compares state statute to our town ordinance, and if there are changes that need to be made to the ordinance, that those are presented to us in a fashion that we can review and or agree or disagree and go from there. Right, Animal Advisory Board, of which Abby is a member.
So that would be
and-
the board that I would have do the comparison.
That's what I would think. And particular, I mean, if there was an animal control officer with the animal control officer. So, but I would also recommend, Jared, that through CHIP and or, I'm not sure who the proper body for this would be, but to explore what the training options are. Yeah, and to see what's available and whether you're, interested in doing that. Because as somebody said, asking somebody to do this that doesn't have training, doesn't have some, the animal control issues that one encounters are surprisingly varied. Again, from rabid raccoons to, vicious dogs to
Loose
horse
horses,
kicks
loose
to,
cows.
it's all across the board, and I very much appreciate your willingness.
I didn't volunteer out of, this is the goodness of my heart. I've been asked by several people to do this.
Okay, that's good.
I said, I think you'd be good at it, and I said, well, I was asked last year to do it, and I didn't do anything about it. But the members of the animal board have asked me to do it.
Okay. And we also have certainly expressed a willingness in the past to underwrite any training that one might want. And some equipment, exactly. So basic, the other thing that's sort of a basic necessity is a vehicle that you're willing to put a dog into, because where dogs go to when they need to go somewhere is over to the Humane Society. So, that has to be something you're willing to do also. So.
In our contract with them, they will not take any animal that has bitten.
Oh, that's right.
Anything vicious, they will not take. So,
The sheriff will not, is that what you're
no.
No, Wyndham County Humane Society.
Can we formally ask you to send a warning letter to Heather and CC a copy to the dog's owner
The advisory board.
and the advisory board, please?
We can follow up with Ian on that and see what he has done and go from there.
Yeah.
So we have 2 dog owners, one of which is incarcerated.
But we can follow up on it.
Yeah.
So we will,
Because I think being Putney and knowing how we all are here in Putney, and we really care about one another, and we care about each other's dogs, and I think that's really special. And I think that having the town formally, acknowledge that to the people who lost their
Yes,
dog is very, very important.
yeah.
And we don't want this to happen again.
And we don't want it to happen again. Right.
No.
So, I want to be clear that a warning to the violators, and you want it CC'd to the victim.
Yes, please.
So the victim has been contacted by Ian Tuttle more than once. And so something in writing is next. Okay.
That it would just, I think it's just a neighborly.
Well, I think we should
Nice
find out
thing
I think we should find out exactly what Ian has already done,
Right.
and then go from there.
But I think also if you included the Title 20, the victim, in this case, would then know what her recourses are.
Yeah,
She'd know that she has recourse, other than just a fine that the town gets.
yeah,
She could take that woman to court
yeah,
and get restitution,
yeah.
and it's all spelled out in the Title 20.
Yeah.
So that's included with the letter, that'd be good.
So are you unaware that she's been paid for the vet bill?
I heard that.
Yes,
Okay.
I confirm that. The check clear, it was written, cashed, and that part is,
All right, so this incident, is an unfortunate one. But now she should be put on notice that if this happens again,
Then there's
Then there are-
different set of
there are-
circumstances. Yeah. No, I mean, my assumption is that she has been informed that by our officer.
but shouldn't she
But-
get something
but-
from the town?
Well,
Regardless of what
she
you
may,
got.
she may have already gotten something from the sheriff's department. I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I don't know what has been.
But the town shouldn't renege on its responsibility. It should say.
No, but if the sheriff's department has already taken that responsibility, as Chip said, under our, they're an agent of us. So if he's already done this, then we shouldn't necessarily be redundant with that. We need to find out though, so we'll find out. and
He doesn't have
follow.
letterhead from the town to write it.
But he has a letterhead from the Wyndham County Sheriff's Department, and if he writes a citation that says your dog has had one incident, I think they're, our authority versus their authority are one and the same when they're working for us, so, but I think we should find out what's been done and go from
that
there.
sounds good. And I just, question of protocol, in another incident where the sheriff has done an investigation, is it typical that he or she would bring that report back to you for your files or for future reference?
We have they hold the records at the county, at the sheriff's department, but we
Right.
have incident reports of what was done, and
That's-
yes, it would indicate follow-up was done on so-and-so day and so on and so forth.
Just so you're informed.
We,
That's what I mean.
yeah.
Yeah.
Typically, the town manager reviews that regularly, and if there's anything that draws attention,
The monthly billing that comes in with incidents, every incident from being pulled over for speeding to a welfare check, all that stuff is listed daily. And when we pay the bill, we get what we're paying for.
And I think the letter should follow the dog as well, because it could go to another owner. She could give it away.
yeah, we probably don't have the ability to enforce that in any way,
Its
but
name,
yeah,
its
yeah,
license number is
Yeah.
recorded.
yeah.
Can I get a word in?
Yeah.
Thank you. I helped write the first one, and I was surprised it was 20 years ago.
Back in '98.
Yeah, this is very, very similar, and Abby, there is provision in here that a dog hurts another dog or ruins somebody's property. That's in there, because that's one of the reasons this all came to be. And, my life has been in dogs, running camp, going to the dogs and living with dogs and grooming dogs. There are just some people that are crummy people. They always kind of push on the law or live outside of it, and they don't follow regulations. So this description that you have of the barking dog and the woman's being, it's an annoying thing. And he says, he starts shooting guns. That is really tricky. And if we do get an animal control officer, I think they would need some training similar to what police get and how to de-escalate the situation. So that's one thing. Another is, we're talking a lot about the punitive side of it. And I was been thinking about what's the preventative side of it.
Right.
So, I mean, you get that guy with the woman who's, that, I don't know what you do about that in any situation, but the fact that we can't have a dog off lead in town, is that enforced? I think it's great that it's in here. There's certain places your dog must be on a leash.
I mean, the problem is who's going to enforce it? We don't have the ability, again, with an animal control officer, if there was a complaint about a dog off its leash regularly, then we could ask the animal control officer to go and address the situation. But,
Yeah.
it's just
this
a
is so
person power
difficult.
issue. Yeah.
I thought, I'm gonna go to the meeting, and if you want, I'll put it out through my, network of people all over the country. Do they know anything that has worked? But I could do it, but I have a feeling it's just bad people doing bad things all over the place.
And I think we all agree that this is not that scenario.
No.
We just had an unfortunate incident.
Yeah.
Could it escalate to that scenario? Possibly, I have no idea. I don't know the people involved. But that certainly happens, but this does not appear to be one of those situations. So,
It doesn't to me either.
yeah.
I was on diversion board for a while, and I don't know how you would work this in, but this particular case, where I'm assuming the person with the dogs feels horrible, like beyond horrible.
Yeah.
And maybe something, they could come to some meeting like this, and the select board could make up a contract. Like usually in diversion board, we'd have someone writing a formal apology, and anyone else who was harmed could be like, we caused so much trouble in the town, and we blah blah, and then they do some kind of community service, so that.
We don't have the ability to enforce any.
Oh, you don't have any, okay.
No. I mean, even if we had it under statute, which might be there, but, we're gonna send Chip out to make somebody do.
This is a lot like recycling.
It's, not to make light of what you're suggesting, but it's very
Yeah,
labor
this is so
intensive to do
difficult.
that kind of thing. Yeah, it's challenging.
I did I was watching for Heather to come back, and I was gonna ask her for her story, her side.
Yeah.
But like I said, I think she's, feels so badly that she's moved, or she's gone. I mean, she's lives across the street from me.
I mean, that would be too bad for
Yeah,
her.
I wanted to hear her side of it,
Yeah.
just so I could, because I knew she wouldn't come to this. She feels
It'd
terrible.
be an uncomfortable
She
situation.
would not
It would
have
be-
probably come.
I
I don't
wouldn't
think
come.
she's.
Yeah.
Where would I come?
My understanding was she had taken both dogs out to go to the bathroom, one of them defecated. And when she bent over with the bag on her hand to pick it up,
Off it went.
off the dog went. And so her ability to then grab a leash, because her hand was now doing something else, it all happened that quick. So she was doing the right thing, it turned out to be a terrible event. That's my understanding of what the story was that was narrated and put on video by Ian Tull. So, yes, I mean, she went out the door innocently enough for the dogs, and it didn't turn out that way.
I spoke to her a year ago or so, because she kept bringing her dog across the street to relieve itself. And I asked her not to. And she was very emotional, but she respected my request. So, I mean, she seems to be a reasonable person.
Was she picking it up? Was she picking up?
Yeah, and she said, I pick it up. I said, I know, but it's still, there's, those concerts on the lawn around.
Where is it that this is?
Right next to the, between next stage and the gleanery.
Uh-huh.
I said, even,
Yeah.
you want to sit on the lawn, or even where something was picked up, still, you wouldn't want to do that.
At least one of them.
It's not your,
Okay, well, we'll table that till next week.
Right, yeah, anyone who's interested in the advisory board, the position's open. You know. We need to move on, but do you have one last
No,
comment?
I just want to underscore what Josh has been saying about getting really good training for anybody in this position, because, I mean, I had an experience, and this was 20 years ago, and it was Henry Farnham who came, but a dog actually chewed its way through my door into our kitchen when I had small children. Because I had a female dog, and this dog, and it did not have a collar. So we didn't know whose dog it was. So if you're called to a situation where, you know, you don't even know who the dog is, and Wyndham Humane Society isn't going to take it, you better know exactly what you need to do with it, you know, in a situation like that.
In a lot of cases.
Thank you for.
Thanks for your time and also your service.
And Jared, we will, I think what we'll do is table till next week, and when we have a full board, look at an appointment, but thank you all.
We should order these, because guys, the door dogs get crazy.
They're about to leave, so.
Let's take a quick break.
So Karen tried to group everything so that you could move piles.
Gotcha, no, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Don't mix anything up, because it's in order.
It's nice and fast. This was all dog.
Yeah, that's all that.
And that piece right there.
Yeah, that just came.
That's what just came in.
But it's definitely dog. For animal control.
So this was your copy?
Yes, thank you.
Yep. All right, okay, so personnel policy.
So, personal policy retirement. The board had voted maybe a couple months ago about in the new budget, and as of July 1st in the fiscal year, moving the Putney employees from Group A to Group B.
Yep.
We were notified by VMERS that we needed to have made that decision and submitted to them by September 30th of the year in advance. However, we certainly have the ability and the right to appeal to the VMERS Board of Trustees, I believe is what it is. And so our intention is to draft a letter on behalf of the board and submit that it is obviously an improved benefit to our employees and to the system, and for our ability to compete and maintain employees with our neighboring towns. And so I think that I don't even feel I need a motion to be able to move forward with that if the board agrees with me.
Yeah.
And we will get that sent off. The other piece of that puzzle is that we have budgeted to do this already within the numbers provided to you. And so I wanted to continue to pursue that on behalf of the employees.
Well, the other thing I would say is just that, I would say that it sounds like it makes sense to submit that letter, but also just make sure we're ahead of the deadline. If they turn us down,
Yeah, next time.
you know, exactly, and then we could even implement, you know, if they're, I don't know when their decision making is, but, you know, if it's due in September and they make a decision, given, as you said, that we've already budgeted for it, you know, potentially we
starts
could
July
implement
1.
it.
July 1 annually, it's their cycle.
Okay,
It's their cycle.
so we can't jump in.
Yeah, to understand, working with arbitrary analysis, future, present, and membership and budgeting and trying to come up with rates and whatnot. They need those actuaries to have all of that stuff.
Wait.
And so that's why I think that's exactly why by September 30, they know December what they're forecasting for July.
For July, yeah. So we just want to make sure that if we can't get included this year, that we
do it
stay
again
ahead
for
of
that.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the story behind that one. So we will draft a letter and send it off to them.
Good.
All right,
All right, big buck time, right?
big bucks time.
Highway equipment. Plow truck.
550 series frontline plow truck repair replace. So at the time that this agenda was set for last week, we did not know the exact status of the F550 plow truck. It's a 2008 truck. It has more than outlived its useful life relative to that type of truck.
When was it charted for replacement on the capital?
Next year.
Next year.
July 1. It's 6 months
Of
shy.
18, okay, so.
Of 19's budget.
Yeah,
So this was in our capital plan. The theory was we had a $10,000 trade-in value. We were gonna borrow 77 and replace this truck. We now have a truck with a motor sitting in the back, a transmission sitting in the back and a motor that's no good in the front. The crankshaft is bent. Is it a function of the employee? The answer to that is no. Dummerston has a fire apparatus of the same make model with 9,000 miles on it and a bent crankshaft. So this is a reason that in terms of looking at equipment, we're not looking at a Ford. So we do have quotes that were provided in your packets. And part of the key is availability. And so you'll see a Hillsborough Ford, it's also a Chrysler Dodge Jeep. They gave us a price for a replacement 550 series, or in their case, 5500 series diesel cab. This truck is red in color. This truck comes with 7-year, 100,000 mile warranty. This truck is sitting on the lot today and can be picked up as early as tomorrow. This is the price of cab and chassis, as you see, $51,267. There is an additional approximately $36,000 worth of equipment to be put on by HP Fairfield, who has traditionally upfitted our trucks.
yeah.
My intention for you would be to approve us purchasing this truck, and then at town meeting as an article, you would warrant to finance what you've already purchased for a period of 5 years, $87,000. We have the cash in hand to cover it now. The board also has the authority by statute, which should be the third page down, that allows you to borrow. It's highlighted on mine, a little more grayed out.
A and 3.
You have the authority to go into indebtedness for purposes of highway equipment, granted without voter approval.
Yeah.
So you could so instruct that you desire to have the seek financing immediately. It would show up within the current budget as borrowed funds and a purchase. And then the budget next year, in which I plugged in 87,000, I would take out the borrowed funds and a purchase. It's a no change in taxes. It's just, and in the past, your budget's never reflected this type of stuff.
Right.
So I would just be removing it from next year's budget. Again, doesn't impact the tax rate.
And we just prefer Hillsborough over
The
us.
price and the availability. The price is lower already than the other bid. The warranty is 2 years longer than the other bid.
And they've done
And the truck is on the lot.
Does the warranty include the powertrain?
Yes,
It does.
7 years both.
Okay.
Yeah. Goss, it's 5 years and then for an additional fee. And his price was already higher anyway.
And we're Dodge versus Ford. I mean, I understand that if we've had two, or if there have been two crankshafts, but that's also a 10-year-old vehicle. So
Yeah.
presumably they've straightened that problem out. Maybe not. I mean, is it Brian's recommendation that we go with a Dodge?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. His recommendation, we go with a Dodge. Yeah. And he and I have talked about it several times. In my conversation this afternoon with Scott, he thinks, yes, we need to do it, and yes, we should do it, though he's not here to cast his vote. The question really is whether you want to seek as a board yourselves and remove the article for the financing and simply do it on your own, which you are authorized to do by statute, or to simply make the purchase and then replenish the cash, if you will, by financing by article. It is my opinion that you have the authority to administer highway and go into highway debt, and we can simply move on and put it in the budget to cover
Add it to the highway budget.
It is
But
next year.
still, you're saying finance it.
Still finance it now, and then I add a payment into the budget next year,
Right.
the capital payment.
Right.
I would have to do this within the next 7 days.
Which we were gonna be buying a new truck a year from now anyway.
6
Or
months.
6 months from now. So that was already included in the
Well, that
budget, or?
would mean
that would
not
be-
in 19, but in 20, you make your first payment. So we'd be making it 1 year early. Now, I can borrow the money and say I want to make my first payment in July of 19. That
Right.
puts it in the fiscal year
Fiscal
after.
year, right.
I can do that. I've done that before when I've requested funds. My first payment shall be $15,000 plus interest that year. And they just calculate it out. And
I don't know that it makes that, I mean, unless you feel there's an advantage to doing it that way, I would say.
it closer matches what your capital plan was
Right.
versus making a payment early.
Right.
I mean, all that does is you're gonna pay more interest, but we as a town can borrow a lot cheaper than,
We pay more interest if we put it off for 6 more months.
yeah, if we say we're gonna pay 18 months worth of
No,
interest versus,
I mean, if we have the money, I would say we go ahead and do it, and then,
and then finance it later.
Do you have to have it certified from the voters
No,
to borrow?
nope, not for highway equipment.
but I think the intention would be to basically have that discussion at town meeting.
Yeah.
You know, tell people what the situation is and why we did what we did.
Yeah.
You know, try and be as transparent
Yeah.
about it as
I just know
possible.
that sometimes the bank wants a certification from, that it was voted on at town.
Right, no, I think this is the statute, it falls in the highway statute that we are able to do that.
And that would absolutely be true if you're financing beyond 5 years. Then you must go to the voters.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what it is, it's over 5 years.
Right.
So, at this point in time, I'd like to be able to have Brian contact the dealer. Our HB Fairfield can turn this thing around within the first week of February and have it ready for us to use this winter.
So I'll make a motion that we approve the purchase of a Ram 550 diesel cabin chassis from Hillsborough and upfitting from HB Fairfield for a total of
87,000. Yeah,
All right.
it'll turn out to be an up to when we get done. But the math right now comes out to just under
somewhere in
87.
that range.
Okay, second. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Brian, thanks you.
Oh, here it is.
Next, under highway equipment, propane generator for the highway garage in the current year budget, in place of buying a mower and a pickup truck. Again, I spoke with Scott about this item, and he agrees with my thought concept here. We had $20,000 for direct capital purchase, which was meant to be for a trailer, a pickup truck, and a mower. At the time that that decision and budget was done, we had 6 highway employees, and we had the intention that 10 hours a week would be spent in municipal town hall by one of the highway employees. That has not happened. Town hall looks like it does because the admin assistant does the cleaning.
Tries to keep up.
We both do the shoveling. So,
Yeah.
and so to repurpose those funds to provide a permanent generator to the highway garage that would be run on propane. The estimate for the generator is $11,000, and I think that's right here in this pile.
Yes, it is.
And $3,000 to $4,000 for propane tank and gas to connect to it. We have, as of this winter and fall, we have been in situations in which Green Mountain Power has contacted us and said we're cutting service to the town of Putney. The substation is going to be taken offline. And it was offline for about 13 hours. In an ice event, the last truck that was filled with diesel was our pickup. The other trucks had no source of fuel because when Putney's out, so is Sunoco. And so the source of fuel we would have had is the fire station. A 500-gallon tank in the ground, which you might be able to get 450 gallons out. If it's full, it probably wouldn't be. So this situation would allow us to do equipment repair with welding, to run the diesel pump and the gas pumps that are down there, and to stay in active motion during events that require highway to be available and working. So that was an event in which we knew about. Events which we don't know about is when the power goes out and our highway garage goes down, and we don't hear from GMP, we just know we're without power. So as this would be a new capital purchase, just redesignating that, diverting from money we already had in this year budget and repurposing it for what I would consider emergency preparedness.
Does King's do maintenance, et cetera? I'm just wondering the value of having somebody like, for example, Powers, who are generator people, do this. I don't know whether we've gotten more than one bid.
King's does right now everything at the fire station with the propane one.
They do the service contract, et cetera? Okay. And we're also looking at replacing the fire department one?
Yes, different financing, yes.
Okay, should we be asking, I mean, if we're doing two of them, we might be able to negotiate a little bit, or maybe we already have?
I think the two have already been negotiating.
Have they? Okay.
Yeah, and in this case, this would be current year budget and could be done immediately. We have the equipment to lay the pads, the ability to lay the pads and dig the trench, and have the generator, prepared and put in place very quickly.
There's not currently any pads or anything for?
At the highway garage?
Not at the highway.
No, at the location.
They just had a portable, didn't they? What have they been?
They have a tractor
Oh,
with a 3-point, with a PTO trailer generator.
Oh, that's right.
Which takes about 50 minutes to set up and is not enough power to maintain vehicles, just to maintain lights and heat.
Right.
So,
What I have at home works good for me.
well,
Pain
till
in
you
the
turn on your,
Pain in the neck, but it works.
5-gallon gas tank on top of it, right?
No, a little diesel tractor.
No, well, that's good, unless you need to actually plow a driveway, now your tractor's tied to and tethered. So,
One big one.
and all well, good intention for the mower and the pickup and the trailer stuff. We already authorized $2,000 to buy a trailer, so we've got 18 left. That's more than enough to handle getting this emergency preparedness situation set up, so that what seems to be a more current trend is power going out more frequently, that our highway guys have the ability to function, fuel, and run.
Yeah, and I think we came to the conclusion that owning our own mowing equipment didn't necessarily make as much sense as it initially appeared to. So.
Yeah, well, and I think that coupled with the 10 hours a week of town hall maintenance
Right.
would make sense. The town hall maintenance isn't working, it's literally not happening.
Right.
So, as I see it, we're gonna adjust the money that has been charged to town hall maintenance back over into highway, because that's really where the work was. There wasn't time spent here.
I think it makes total sense.
Okay.
So that would require,
I'll make a motion that we approve the purchase of 22 kilowatt generator through King's Electric to be installed at the highway department.
Okay, second? It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Again, Brian, thanks you.
Sure.
Easy.
Brian's on a roll.
Yeah, quite- yeah, exactly, who's our next
Told
item
him,
too?
told him the same thing, so, all right. 19's budget. So, printed out in 12 pages, the budget. And so, also within looking at this budget, your 18, the center couple columns there, 18 budget, 18 to date, are in the same report. So you can see where we are trending. To start with, the highway in the budget for next year, we talked about getting an outdoor wood heat system with circulating hot water going through the building and whatnot. And then it was brought up, well, that type of system has a whole lot of manual overhead to it. And so as a result of that, and we could more simply take the wood stove that we've been using, which has got to go out according to our insurance carrier, and replace it with a propane burner, which is, in terms of efficiency and emissions, better. In terms of BTUs, not as good as oil.
Right.
But then if we couple that with a tank in the ground, with our generator and our furnace, then for less money, we have a system that doesn't require an employee in the winter to come in every single day for purposes of maintenance of the wood burning furnace. It would be a self-running system.
And I know that everybody enjoys having a stove in there. You know, they'd enjoy it more if they didn't have to feed it all the time
Yeah.
and had a propane system, but what we've been told is that we can't have a wood burning appliance in that building at all, is that
Correct.
correct? Yeah. okay.
Correct. And what we have in there is put together by two guys plumbing.
Right.
So it is not UL
Two guys
listed, not
plumbing.
compliant.
Skip
Two
and Brian.
Two guys welding, really.
Two guys, yeah.
So we've been told to remove that, and Chief Goddard, of course, as a public building, is well aware of that. This offers then to be, if we're gonna do the propane generator, that we not get a 100-gallon tank next to the propane generator. We
Get a
bury
500.
a 500-gallon tank
Yeah,
that runs both.
yeah.
And then we have both the furnace running from the generator and the furnace producing heat.
And we already purchased propane for the fire department.
We already do propane for the fire department generator.
Ostensibly, you can get a better deal. than
Decent deal.
Well, yeah,
Bigger size.
and what didn't happen, I guess, this year, but will happen between the time I leave and June 30th, I think Karen is already planning on going out to bid with some fuel oil, diesel fuel,
Yeah.
gasoline, and
Right.
propane.
A full package.
And who can provide all these things.
The other thing I would suggest, and they may well have already explored that, whether it makes sense to buy a 1,000-gallon tank as opposed to a 500, whether that increases our purchasing power to enough to offset the increased cost
Yeah,
of a larger tank.
I think that'll be predetermined by demand. If we have to have 24 hours of generator run, what do we have to have?
That's true, but also if we have yeah.
It's 500
Just,
right now.
you know, if it's gonna cost us, you know, whatever it is, $2,000 to put in a 500-gallon tank, and it would cost $2,600 to put in 1,000, then we should
2,000.
go 1,000.
Yeah. And so,
Just picking numbers out of the air,
yeah,
those have nothing to
but,
do with reality.
and typically, in an environment like this, we would buy the tank from the supplier who would set up our gas lines and fill it the first time. Doesn't guarantee they have our service forever. It just means that I would put it out
Right.
there. You're gonna set up, you're gonna test, and you're gonna fill it
Right.
as part of your price.
Right, right.
And what that does is get that person, their money is gonna be in the delivery of the product. Okay? So that's what the concept is. That is, again, within this year's budget, to do the generator. But if we're planning on doing the furnace instead in next year's budget,
Then we would certainly want to at least do the infrastructure.
we would do the infrastructure and basically lease a 100-gallon tank for the generator till such time as we convert it. Okay? Knowing that we're it's gonna change over.
It'll be like an above ground thing now.
Yeah, that'd just be above
I
ground
thought
like
they
a
were-
traditional house.
Free
If you buy product from them, typically they are,
Okay, yeah.
but in a commercial setting, sometimes they lease them.
And typically not for a buried tank.
not for buried, I guess that makes
Buried
it.
tank,
Usually
yeah.
above ground, yeah, exactly.
Above ground, you know, it comes with the service.
The other thing is if you do a buried tank, you want to own it because then, as I think Chip was implying, you can go to different vendors to negotiate your price.
That makes sense, yeah.
So that would be, in the budget, we had plugged in under building improvements, a wood burning system with circulating water, which is much more expensive to put in than what we're talking about now.
And this would be what, like a modine type, wall mounted some sort?
No, I think they have forced hot air in there now.
That's,
so-
okay.
So they would just be inserting, taking out oil, putting in propane.
Oh, they
forced hot
have
air.
an oil system currently?
They do,
Oh,
they do. And they try to supplement that with
With
wood.
wood, right, yeah.
Sorry. So the notes on that particular line for highway garage improvements will be changed to reflect moving to propane heat from outside wood burner. It should be cheaper than the cost. I mean, I think we put in 25,000 to get an outdoor.
Yeah,
wood
they're,
and
they're expensive for
expensive,
installation.
and they're also labor intensive. And versus this, we should be able to do possibly for half the price.
And they'll be able to get a lot more work done.
Now, I think I asked this before and I can't remember what the answer, Wyndham Wood Heat Initiative? I mean,
Typically, they're looking in that, one of the biggest, it's done by a point system, they grade you on points on what your project is and what it's gonna provide.
right,
And the biggest points is new employment.
economic driver, right.
And you're not getting new employment out of this. So that wood heat, and it's certainly if we go away from the wood furnace, then we're out of the program.
Well, what I was thinking is we could, if it were viable, we could consider doing a pellet fired system, if they were willing to underwrite a certain amount of it. I mean, we had them do the fire department, I can't remember what they looked, and town hall.
Town hall too, yep.
Town hall didn't make sense, and the number for fire department was higher than made sense to us,
Yeah.
but.
So, again, coming from my experience, the Bellas Falls Police and Fire Station had a pellet boiler circulating hot water for their heat. Once every 24 hours has to be taken offline, cooled down and cleaned, and then returned and fired up daily. Daily. So
That's an outdated system, but.
So when you get into that, you're gonna be dealing with ash, you're gonna be dealing with pellet ordering, pellet storage,
Right.
pellet feeding. All well and good when you go home every day. It's not a function of the highway department in the winter to make sure they come back off the roads, because 2 hours later it demands more pellets.
Yeah.
And it ends up, it took a lot of storage space when you're buying, 10,000 pounds of pellets at a shot.
Yeah.
You don't have a huge hopper.
Right.
So, it seems great when it's at home, when you upsize it and then you start paying an employee to do other than the work we need them to do.
Is that the same as wood though? What would Wade say about that?
And I think that would be fine because it's a containment system.
Gotcha.
Well, it also can be an outdoor system. They can be outdoor systems, they can be indoor systems, but it depends on what type of system you want. I mean, they require very little maintenance now, but they do require maintenance, there's no question.
But it
But
won't,
it is also I mean, my biggest interest in that would be if, Wyndham Regional via the Wood Heat Initiative was gonna underwrite half of it, then I would think that would be something we should consider.
Yeah.
If that's not gonna happen, then it's probably,
Yeah,
Not
I think it's a competitive system and the point values are really high if you're going to generate something that generates employment.
yeah.
And we're not, we're gonna gain a highway employee by putting a wood heat system in.
Percentage
We
wise.
played it, yeah, percentage wise, that's a 20%, no, 18% improvement. So was Brian's concept through conversation with me, and considering, whether or not wood was actually a good thing to do with 5 guys. And in the winter, every day, someone has to go into that office.
Right, yeah, of course.
So, so I'll change the memo on there and leave the amount of money there to be the same.
So you don't need a motion on this?
No, this is all in the budget for 19. So then, again, this is under the continued budget discussion for 19, but fire station propane generator. What I got for history from the chief was in 2006 and several times post 2006, he came requesting replacement of this generator, and it was pushed off to a future time, So that generator basically is good, I guess, for a 15 to 20 minute run, then it shuts off, so he's gonna go reset it, and go again. It's not reliable, it has been on its last legs, at least for 3 years. And so he went again and got a quote for a generator that positioned differently, positioned just outside the wall of the electric room. And would go into the electric room and not serve one panel, but serve all 3 panels. So the entire facility would be up and running. And that the generator's capacity would be to be able to run the whole place, including what we also had in the budget, the 3 HVAC systems. So designed for the system, what comes in now is 400 amps. Would be a normal draw run is 200 amps, so we're talking about a generator that'll do 200 continuous amps.
No, monster. So
It's a monster.
50 kilowatt or something?
Whatever
That's a big
it's
generator.
on the quote here. So he did a memo.
48 kilowatt.
Yep, and you see the price there, $31,675. The expectation on this would be that highway would come down, do the trenching for the pad, prepare for the conduit to go in. And then may or may not be able to do the trenching to out back where the gas tank is. So he's gonna run a line. So the only way to go to where the line right now is at the present generator. The old generator's value might be of use to someone, but really it's a Ford 4-cylinder engine that runs on propane. All of the other components of it are the generation of electricity, which you can't find replacement parts. So it might be an engine good to somebody, not counting on any trading value or saleability of that item. So,
It's 44 years old?
no,
Isn't that-
No, I think it was purchased when it was, when the fire department was built.
right.
When we-
Yeah, when you
It
go-
says the age of the generator, 45
Oh.
years.
Well, they gotta use one when they buy it. It might have
Is that
been
right?
that they
Maybe
gotta
it was
use-
over here first, I can't remember.
Yeah, was that?
Might have been at the fire
It was at
station.
the old
Yeah.
station. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's, it's life.
We've gotten our money.
Yeah.
I think so. So my thought on that is whether or not the board wants to, within 19's budget, talk about this. Or my take would be that you have sitting in capital reserve now, in the neighborhood of $63,000. And you could use that capital reserve to make this, again, emergency generator purchase as a direct capital purchase from your reserves. You may or may not then ask as an article to replenish some of or all of what you've spent as reserve or over time. I don't see in the capital plan where the capital reserve is planned to ever be used. And you are at a point at which you have pushed 11 years beyond, I think, what he would call his first request to get this taken care of. And at the time he was requesting, he was replacing what was there. Now what we're talking about is trying to run the whole facility. And again, when the substation went down, his communications were every 20 minutes, went out and restart the generator and let it boot back up. And if we have a real EOC requirement.
I would assume, just knowing Tom, that he's explored whether the state would want to underwrite any of this for exactly that reason.
Money for generators,
Not
not available from Department of Homeland Security. They are looking for big apparatus, and they are looking for quantity, and typically, traditionally, now, full-time fire department. Where there are people in the building 24/7, and what they need is devices that are immediately accessible to them for immediate response. Backup generators don't tend to get funding.
Interesting.
Not even through FEMA or something? I mean,
No.
hazard mitigation?
Well, what are you mitigating? The fact that I was one of,
Possible disaster.
no, I can see replacing a culvert that's 10-inch with one that's 48.
Yeah.
That's mitigation.
Yeah.
But no, generators are, you would do it anyway,
Mhm.
you know, but you wouldn't underwrite $200,000 worth of Scott airbags. You know, generator, we already know lasts 44 years minus one.
Minus 11.
So again, my recommendation to you would be to utilize your capital reserve and proceed with changing out this generator for the fire station,
And then figure out whether we're gonna.
and then ask whether or not you want to pursue a capital fund reserves. This may play into some of the two articles that were only warning last year that we reworded and kept on as articles this year. When we get to those, then I'll point it out. So that purchase would require a motion and a vote.
So moved.
All right, moved and I'll second it. Moved and seconded. Further discussion? All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Tom, thanks you. I'm sure Brian will too. All right, retirement VMERS rate changes. So I gave you the story of being denied that we're going to appeal to. The rate for VMERS actually, July 1st, that we budgeted was 5.5. The rate is going to go up 1/8%, 0.5, or yeah, 5.625. That's not a significant change in the budget, and we don't know that we're going to win the appeal. We already had built in some cushion into what we had budgeted for. So if we lose the appeal, we've got more money in the budget than we
Because
need.
we
And
stand
if
for
we
it. Right.
win the appeal, we may come in slightly under, provided that we have some employee who joins the highway department, for example, and ends up at $15 an hour for 2,000 hours when we budgeted 1,500 hours. So, yeah, I think it's not significant to shock and jive of that, but to be aware that the number did change from the first time we presented it to you. Unless you wish me to alter those numbers by next week to compensate for that 8%.
Yeah, I think.
It can be done, but I'm thinking it's fairly easy.
Without knowing yet exactly what they're gonna do, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
All right, so that's it relative to the budget discussion, unless you have any other things that you're desiring to talk about within the budget. I've highlighted, those areas of significant change in the past. None of those have changed. Like I said, I think I will take the 87,000 note proceeds, and I may leave that in and take the expense out, just so that it reflects that we're intentionally going to borrow money.
Right.
The other choice is not to put it in, borrow the money, and just book it directly to a balance sheet, which we can do.
Just noticed that this letter from Mike
I know, gets stuck
got
on
stuck
the back.
in the
didn't
back.
it?
Oh, that goes to the dog pile.
got stuck
Yep.
in the back of the budget.
It goes to the dog pile.
That's what, from my wiki.
I didn't,
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't want you to forget.
Yeah.
You knew that we'd go through this budget from stem to stern, right?
They just kept coming.
Anything, Steve, that,
Nothing that, I guess it jumps.
I did discover in the sewer budget, $13,000 principal and interest payment that was not carried the present year, but will be carried next year in the budget. It was treated as a reduction in liability directly and not raised theoretically through fees. So I'm in the midst of trying to calculate out what should happen to both water and sewer fees, leaving the 45,000 transferred in the budget from general fund over to sewer.
Now, it's just the 1 year that happened, or do you think that's?
This year, yeah, I think it's the 1 year that it happened. It's possible that there's a grant that we got emailed about, requesting reimbursement for a grant that had been applied to and executed. And I haven't found that grant yet to get the reimbursement request put in. And that request by the grant states it's supposed to pay off one of our debts, or pay down one of our debts. And maybe that's it. So when I get that grant discovered, then I'll be able to find out. But at this point, I've balanced both the water and sewer budgets and calculating what would happen to the rates. All right.
Meeting prep.
Meeting prep.
Were you able to get in touch with Meg?
I did, she couldn't make it.
She couldn't make it.
Yeah, she just started back teaching again
Okay.
from vacation. So, she said,
She'll review on that.
well, I'm gonna email her these anyway.
Yeah.
And then if she has any questions, she'll contact you,
Sounds good.
okay?
Yep.
So those are within your market.
I wanted to clarify and correct me, somebody, if I'm wrong. The article in the Commons stated that since we were petitioned to have the articles about changing the town clerk and/or town treasurer to appointed positions, that we would consider placing them on as warnings. If they've been petitioned, we don't consider it, right? Once they've been legitimately petitioned, they go on as warnings. Is that correct?
Unless it's something really,
Unless it is not something in which you are not granted authority to administer.
Is that what it is? So,
Yeah, it has to be within the statutory ability of the town
to implement.
to implement whatever is being petitioned. And so if somebody says, I petition that the town of Putney take eminent domain over the
Right.
London Bridge.
Yeah.
And
Then you
you've
can
got all
reject
kinds of
it.
signatures.
Yeah.
It's meaningless.
Yeah.
It's nothing that's within your authorities.
Gotcha.
I can't remember, was that from the floor?
What's
Or is it Australian ballot?
It's Australian ballot.
This one's
Okay,
Australian.
so you're gonna have to have a hearing or something?
Previous to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. A public. Yeah. I think it's within 15 days of town meeting. Is that what it is? There's a time frame. We should find out. Yeah. There's a time frame.
A hearing is required because of,
We'll discuss it.
If it's because we can't discuss, I disagree with you on this one. You say we can discuss things that are on Australian ballot. I say we can't. At town meetings,
So-
we're not allowed to discuss it.
so,
We have to have a public forum of some sort, and I don't remember whether it's a hearing or a meeting or what it is.
so take,
Post warning, at least 10 days. Last day to do it is the 24th.
so take any one of the other ones that are Australian and we don't hold a public hearing for those.
Yeah, I think appointment of,
Officially, maybe exempt from that.
I'm pretty sure. Oh, well, yeah, no, I think that's exempt from the public hearing, but we cannot discuss those in town meeting. And I think that's true for this too. No, we should just find out, we should just clarify it. I mean, I think we should do that anyway, even if it's not a requirement, but I think you're right that it is a requirement.
If that's the case, then I think it's no sooner than 45, no less than 15.
Something like
I
that,
think no
yeah.
less than 15. There's a 30-day window. I think it's 45 days out to 15 days out for your hearing.
Is one we would
It's
have.
really close.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really,
Town meeting.
Because it's gotta be,
You
it's gotta be
report it so
pertinent.
many days before the meeting.
yeah.
And
Right.
so many days before town meeting.
It's on the calendar here.
Okay.
So it's
Yeah,
gotta be
it has
warned at least
statute.
10 days.
It's,
Oh, is that right? Okay.
10 days?
Um,
No more than 10 days?
It's gotta be warned 10 days before the public informational hearing on any public question to be voted on by Australian ballot. So we're looking at February 14th to 24th
To land it
for the
there.
warning, to have the
Hearing.
informational meeting by between February 24th and March 6th. Wait, wait, is this a different one?
That one is different.
Oh, that's a different one.
We should just clarify and make
Yeah.
sure we
Yep.
do it the right way.
Yeah, so we'll check that out and adjust the schedule if we have to.
And I actually got that off the VLCT calendar.
Yeah, no, I think that sounds
Yeah.
right-ish. I
Yeah.
can't remember which,
But we can,
but we should make sure.
yes.
So I would think that our approach would be that we hold a special hearing at 5:30 just before one of our regular board meetings. Unless it
Yeah,
requires a
that makes
special
sense.
meeting by schedule.
Well, we probably ought to do it somewhere with a bigger, either at the school or at the fire department, because I'm guessing we'd get a pretty heavy turnout.
Turnout. Yeah,
And do what we can to advertise it as well as we can, so.
all right. We'll get that.
But I just wanted to reiterate that we don't, well, again, if it was something ridiculous, we could pull it, but that we don't have the choice to consider whether to put it on or not, that this has been mandated by the voters, exactly.
Okay. On here, you will see Articles 7 and 8, unless there's something else above you, Karen. Articles 7 and 8, we got a letter from Landmark College.
Yeah, and I was wondering if you could explain, if I understand the difference that he was referring to, as far as, in the past, we've done it this way, but we're doing it this way now. I can't remember the specific language in the letter.
It's right here. It's actually in your packet.
Oh, it is, okay.
I know.
So in that sense,
Yeah, I double-sided things, so you kind of have to.
It's on the back of which?
that
Here it is, yeah, okay. So are these,
so,
I think these are the same ones that came up previously, aren't they?
yes,
Karen did some research today. One of them is, and the other one is the field.
so,
The soccer, not the new field, the next to
5 acres or 5, whatever.
At the corner of Hilo and.
yes, that corner of
That's gotten
Highway
exempt,
triangle.
that's gotten exempt a number of times in the past, I think, hasn't it?
No.
Oh, because that's right, because they purchased it.
They just purchased.
That's right, yeah. No, we've talked, okay.
So, and the other,
We looked up when it was voted before. It went on for quite a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
there's our
Both of them,
yeah,
Yeah,
whatever
The-
they asked for.
the 4-acre one, yeah.
Well,
That's like 3 years ago, 4 years ago, something like that.
2015.
Yeah, that's what spurred the whole study committee.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah. But that wasn't about the field.
No, that was
That'll be
64
interesting to see
River Road.
whether people,
yeah.
what the response to that is.
And so I believe that when they first asked for it, this was a multi-unit dwelling with a garage.
Right.
Now that's been removed and it is now their maintenance facility that was built there, next to Forman. And then the field.
Oh, is that where this is?
That's where one of these properties is.
So this would be what was raised?
And I
The
didn't look it
the
up.
4-acre must be, huh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's their new facility. Last year, on the grand list, it was under construction, and I think in the grand list, at like 10% completed project in Taxon.
Right.
It is now 100% completed, so we've never really taxed it at its full value.
Yeah.
It is, through conversation with a lister, it is and could be simply through a petition to the lister, possibly considered exempt for education because it's integral to their facilities.
Function, yeah.
So they are asking a public vote. It actually would be to our benefit to have them apply for the actual educational exemption statute, primarily because we must make up educational tax dollars if we deem it exempt. We do not have to make up those dollars if it is actually statutorily exempt. Okay?
So
it is
have
to
you
our
explained this to them?
This was explained this afternoon to me by Gordy, that maybe this
Jordy.
this actually qualifies if they applied to the listers. A lister could deem that as qualified exempt without the public vote because it does meet the criteria of which they have the authority to grant.
And then the state,
And then we don't have to make up educational dollars on a value.
That's probably not true for that parcel, for the
If
for
it
the
is a
field,
practice
though.
field used for sports,
Right.
then it too can qualify.
So maybe we should table this till next week.
Well, we're not gonna
But maybe,
adopt this today anyway.
anyway, so maybe we should ask Jordy to meet with whoever would be the one to meet with about
John.
this, probably, yeah.
Campbell?
Jonathan Johnson?
No,
No.
the, at Lynn.
McLaren.
Oh, John McLaren.
Yeah,
John McLaren.
or, Peter.
Peter
Peter
Eden.
Eden.
No, I don't think it wouldn't be Peter, it might be, Sprocky.
Kyle.
Yeah,
Kyle.
Kyle's, yeah.
Exactly, it might be one of the other.
Yeah, I don't think he'd
I'm not
be
sure.
involved. He's in maintenance, but not in the use of facilities. But I think I'll respond directly. Peter sent this letter, so I would contact Peter and say,
Yeah,
hey,
that's
I think just,
You
it'll
might
actually
want to
save the
explore
town
this
money.
route anyway.
Right.
It'll
Yeah,
save the town money if you did the other route.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but if they didn't, if they defeated it, the voters defeated it, then they still have to pay all of it.
Yes, except if they qualify for that to be exempt because it's an educational facility by state statute exempt, it qualifies for that,
It does.
then it does. And the listers can make that determination before April 1st. And then it is exempt because it is part of their educational facilities.
And the articles come off?
And then we don't need these articles, there's nothing to vote.
No, that would be preferable,
And that would
both
save
from
us
the
money.
tax, exactly, from the tax position, also, politically for Landmark, it would probably,
Yeah.
yeah, I also don't know whether if these were put on as articles and defeated, does that then limit the lister's ability to
No,
change that situation?
not at all,
Okay.
not at all.
I just think, Jordy
Let's
or
do that.
John or somebody should have that discussion with the powers that be so that they know what
Yeah.
the situation
Yeah,
is.
this, through conversation, because I haven't been doing a lot on computers lately, we started talking about these two, and that's when he said, possibly, these simply qualify as grounds that are part of the institution. And from a mathematical standpoint, making up the
That works
educational
out in
tax
our
dollars,
advantage. Yeah,
that's, if we're gonna give it all, then why are we gonna have to make up 2/3 of the tax bill ourselves as taxpayers? I'm not one of them, but, that just, it would save us. So that's those two articles, 7 and 8. So then, 9. The Putney Cares building was sold to Windsor Housing Trust, but the barn out back now
is owned by Putney Cares.
by Putney Cares.
So that's this lot number.
Um,
This is just for the barn out back.
I think so, yes. Yep,
We need to be sure we get that number that's gonna be on the card.
the actual right number that's on the barn. Yeah, because I happened to just be asked about the wastewater allocation for the two to be separated for billing purposes. And so I know in utility billing, we haven't separated them yet, and that could be because we haven't actually got a grand list separation yet. So, and the numbers track. The grand list number matches whatever's used in utility billing, so. it is
Should be
resolved.
a match.
Should be a match. And so the number that's on here, I think, is what it is as it was one unit by Putney Cares. So I want to make sure, like Anita said, that separate building is the one that's going to get a new number.
Right,
And so I want to make sure that's the number we have.
yeah.
Putney Community Center is the next one. Kristen Square, and that's simply 5 years is up.
Yeah.
Max we could do is 5 years. And the Putney Historical Society, again, 5 years is up on that one.
The twin bill.
Yeah.
Oh, that's 20 mil? I thought, didn't they,
741311.
they didn't get, I thought Greg was taking that back. That hasn't happened? Oh, okay.
If it hasn't been recorded, right? No documents have come in for a PTTR on that, so. I had the same discussion that he was working on.
That was my impression, was that
He was
they were
working
gonna do that.
on taking it back.
I'll see Lisa tomorrow. I'll just double check with her where that is. just to
Because
be sure.
if that's the case, then this has been put on through discussion only with the listers that it has come up for renewal.
Right,
That's the reason it's on. If ownership's eminently changing, you may not need it. So basically, we kind of got a week
Well,
to
they've been
string.
talking about it for several years, so I wouldn't get it.
Don't get too excited.
yeah, no,
Don't be holding my breath.
No.
Oh, okay. The next ones appear to be the norm, the library.
yeah.
The sewer fund budget, that will be in the town report. That's the wording that has been used historically, I guess, just as it appears. Then Article 14, this is about the truck that we just agreed to buy.
Yeah.
And this would be, was reworded to say for financing of the truck. Take the word pickup out of it. To be repaid over a period of 5 years. The motion was to buy and then, and not to finance at this time. So this motion will be the public authorizing you to borrow.
In order to.
And basically what you're doing is replenishing yourself
Right.
for something you've already bought. This is, again, showing in the town general fund budget, 43,000 no proceeds with new equipment in the fire department, 43,000 of expense. This is the article to borrow and purchase to replace the rescue truck. That I asked Tom about that number being 43,000 still today, and he says it still is. Then the next article is the Sebbins article.
Yeah.
This is already in the budget numbers that are on the page there. And so the amount you see to be raised by taxes already has this number in it on those forms.
So if you've already put it in the budget, why are we voting on it separately?
That's, when we get down to the last article, the number that gets put in that is what I'm gonna question, what gets put into that.
No, that's not part of the social service stuff.
Correct,
No.
No, it's not.
right. So this is voted on, has been traditionally voted on separately
Right.
on an annual basis, and I've had phone calls today about this and what services they provide, and somebody wants something concrete that happened in Putney.
And we've been clear with them in the past that they need to be there and be able to actually explain that.
Okay, yeah. The next two, these were articles that you had last year
Right.
to move money from your capital fund into special roof replacement, special sidewalk replacement. These two articles are on here to raise money to put into your capital. And those two values of $10,000 are not in the budget that was
Right.
presented to you. So those would be increases in the amount to be raised by taxes. I've only.
But the 81 is, sorry, I missed.
Yeah, the
it.
81 is
okay.
because it's redundant. These other articles were, you literally just requested to move money from capital
Right.
to another fund.
Right.
You didn't raise the money, you just moved it, okay? This says,
Right.
we would raise 10,000
10,000.
and add it to the 10,000 over there.
That's right.
Raise it and add it to the 10,000 over there. I don't know if the board wishes to do that. This, if a penny is $23,000, whether you want to add another 10 to each of your reserves, or whether you do not, or whether you want to combine them into $30,000 to go into capital reserve, that's half of what you're taking out, you know, or to match what you're taking out for the generator. I just took the two articles that you had for the 10 and said, we're not moving it from capital, we're now raising it. They're not in the numbers in the budget.
I mean, this was based on Cynthia's recommendation that we
Set it aside.
have it set aside for the specific purpose, you know,
Yeah.
designated funds. So I don't know enough about the reasoning behind doing it that way or not to know whether
Well, when the public sets it aside, it's a purpose
it's
that
a
must be
designated
met.
fund, right?
Versus capital reserve is simply for purposes in which
Right.
the board chooses to make capital purchasing from.
Yeah,
And so you establish the capital reserve, and we talked tonight, we're gonna make a purchase out of capital reserves, not tax dollars. They got there by tax dollars, I'm quite sure.
right.
This is a case, do you want to increase those reserve funds for sidewalk maintenance and for town hall roof? Or do you not want to? And if you do, how would you do it? This says by taxation.
Does, for the roof replacement, does that include the library too? Is that what
No,
we're
no,
talking about
that's
on this?
just, it's really town hall roof. Roof replacement reserve, and that.
No, it's not just town hall roof.
No,
No.
it's any roof?
It's any roof, any town-owned roof, any
Okay, that's-
Okay,
town-owned.
so just roof replacement was not designated town hall,
No,
because it's, maybe it's town hall renovation that's in the capital fund.
yes,
And roof is roof,
roof
okay.
is separate.
Yeah.
No, we just,
I think that was the point, is that we knew that over time.
roofs are gonna need to be replaced.
And you have to start building that up now.
And
Yeah.
based on the one that was put on the fire station sooner than later, okay.
Right.
Still reading the emails about-
Circumstances,
Yeah.
yeah.
So those two were simply reworded and repeated because they were on last year's
Right.
warning. You may want or not want them at all. So that's why I just reworded them to say, continue the same path.
But either way, you need to raise
You need to
the money.
Not if they don't do anything.
We could just opt not to have articles on
Right.
All
about it.
right, but if you do, you gotta raise the money.
Right.
Yes, then it'll be raised by taxes. So these are written, to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 for the roof replacement reserve. So that's raised by taxes.
So those articles should be first, before the general fund budget.
Yes, they are, because the
They are,
last one is general then highway.
Somebody, when they do the general fund budget, may want to take $10,000 off.
Right, yeah.
Well, you'll be busy taking notes. So those two, again, I'm not sure what you want to do with those, and again, by next week, we'll have to have a plan of what that's going to look like. And again, the school's not even on this. And then 19, this is the general fund article, raise and appropriate the sum of. This is the total of your budget for all activities that are within that budget. And in the case of the present budget, it includes the anticipated borrowing of money for $87,000 and spending $87,000. It does not include the two $10,000 articles above it, but it does include the $8,106. And so I'm not sure what traditionally has gone into the article for the general fund as a number. If there were articles that would
Affect
increase
that
or
number.
decrease that number.
You don't include those.
You wouldn't include those, you
No.
don't include those.
They're voted
So-
on separately.
So in the public,
So in that light, we shouldn't be including that 8,100 for setteds either.
Not
correct.
if it's a separate article.
Right, yeah.
So if there's a separate article to raise it, you've already gotten the authority to raise it. And then when you pass how much for your
You had that.
expenditures,
Right. It's got to be modified.
no,
But not at town meeting.
that's the question I have is the number that goes in this article does or does not include previously passed articles.
Right.
It does or does not include,
No,
does not.
because you're already voting on the 10,000 here and 10,000 here and the 83 or whatever it is.
81.
Yeah,
So then you want,
then the
So you can't
remainder
vote, so
gets
you can't
raised.
vote on it, so you can't
those
vote on
things
it
shouldn't be
again.
included in the general fund
Okay,
at that point.
so that's the clarity that I wanted to make sure, so when we plug in numbers here, these numbers will not match the actual report,
Amount that will, right,
because we're gonna show as if everything passes in a budget plan. And if it doesn't pass, and the separate article does, then we go back in and take out of the budget what didn't pass.
That 28,000, remember we had the
Yeah.
conversation, it's right there. 10, 10, and 81.
right.
Remember, I said
Yeah,
the
no,
number
no.
was off by 28,000.
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
that must be it, right there.
that's probably, yeah.
Yep.
So, that, there are communities who don't name a number in Article 19.
Right.
Right.
They
And
make
fill
the
it in
motion
at the
at the
time.
time that they
Right.
already know the results.
Uh,
But, but by warning it as a number to raise and appropriate, it's everything except what was separately voted on.
Right.
So I'll use that same concept in the article for the highway fund. And within the general fund number is your calculation of 2.5% of all expenditures except capital purchasing and debt service. Goes into that calculation for your social
Social
service
services.
agencies. So, that being said, does the 8106, if passed, need to also go into your social service agencies by a number?
I don't
It
know.
is not capital,
So, no.
it is not debt,
Right.
but it is in your general fund budget because the voters put it there. So,
You know, the social service agency number also is for all practical purposes, it's a tight guideline. So,
Yeah.
the difference of what that percentage is, 2.5% of $8,100 is not gonna make much difference in that. So I would agree with Nita that I don't think that would go in there.
okay. Because, someone going backwards and saying, okay, now I got everything done, does this make 2.5%? No, it's off. That's fine.
It just is off, sometimes it works out just right, sometimes it doesn't.
Because we calculated what that is because it contributes to your general fund in that number that will appear in Article 19. So, you have
Right.
to, you back into it, you back into it, you back into it.
Right.
So it's there. All right. So those are the things I wanted clarity on. And then again, by petition, because it didn't involve any money, Article 21 is the voters of the town of Putney consider resolution by petition. And it reads the resolution as it was brought in with enough signatures to appear as the warning. And this is from the floor.
How is this gonna affect our
Doesn't,
propane generator?
I was just gonna say, well, the propane heat, the
Right, the heat.
generators are sort of a unique circumstance, but
The heat, yeah.
the heat. It'll be some future select board's problem because it's not till 2050.
Right.
and it urges the state, it's not urging us.
Well,
It's just-
the town are just, yeah, you're right.
But, So not, again, and not within our budget is anything about recycling, which is why, in my opinion, from the floor, we are going to see something added to the budget during discussion of general fund relative to recycling.
Yeah,
Somebody's gonna wanna do something and then we'll have that conversation.
yeah.
Yeah. So was there any other necessary articles that you see either wanting to, the board wants to add or wants to remove from this, you know? And again, we have to couple with the school
Right.
to do the whole triple match with this.
It's unusual that we have this many articles.
I know,
It's a lot.
yes.
I've seen people consolidate all of the, you know, land exemptions as one list.
Yeah.
All of the, you know, the shall we appropriate 8100 to sevens and 10 to this and 10 to that as one.
Yeah, I think the exemptions, you know, particularly with the landmark college ones, those have been contentious in the past. You
Yeah.
lump them together and all of a sudden that gets complicated.
Right.
Right.
It's less desirable now.
Do we know who goes first this year?
We do.
School or-
Town does.
Okay.
Because last year school went first, right?
Yeah.
Pretty sure according to what we saw for the warning.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so Karen's going to seek out Alice and say, where's your board at here?
She knows.
I know.
I can't remember whether they have a meeting tomorrow night or not.
Oh, I thought they
It
were
was supposed to be
already
last
approved.
Thursday.
No?
They may well have been. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, they might be meeting again though, yeah.
I don't know.
Approve it, yeah.
we have
Someone's
time.
been sick.
But I did, after we talked, I.
Yeah, we've got a little time.
Yeah.
So,
So as well, relative to town meeting preparation, petitions and whatnot, I want to request of the board that Anita be allowed unfettered access and time coming in daily as she needs for anything relative to town meeting, treasurer duties and whatnot, to be available all the way through town meeting, and with the help of staff in town hall to help her get organized, get JPs, and make things happen for town meeting. At this point, again, we are in a position where we simply need the expertise and guidance.
And
Oh, we need it.
and legal, yeah, no, and
Absolutely.
I would
As a
say.
follow-up, I didn't get a chance to talk with you after we chatted last week.
Yeah, it was Thursday, and then I left and was gone.
I think with my expertise, I should be getting paid $24 an hour, which is what I was getting prior to March.
For this particular stuff, yeah.
Can I make a recommendation? I didn't say it loud.
You're excited?
And I didn't get a chance to talk with you either. But we have, through Cobra, Anita has been responsible to pay her own insurance. And right now, we are 3 months behind, about $2,100. And I would suggest, possibly Anita, that we keep you at 1804 and cover your health insurance for those 3 months that I haven't gotten a Cobra reimbursement.
You mean when I was on Cobra?
Yeah, you're still on.
$700 a month.
Yeah, so I've got $2,100, $2,200 that right now covers the last 3 months that I have been going to talk to you, that at this point, we're still on Cobra, and it's due to the town. And I'm asking the board, if we forgive that, is that
I would suggest that we approve Anita working as many hours as she needs and that we leave it to Anita and Chip to sort out the details of the financial end of that. Does that sound fair? That, you know, you could put a number together that say, this is what that looks like for the Cobra, and that's, you know, what it equates to.
Does that
Okay.
work for you?
Yep.
Good. I mean, good, yes. I think that we're both in a position of need.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anita.
Yes,
Absolutely.
absolutely. Yeah, no, it was great.
Well, I didn't intend to be back here.
No, we didn't think you did, but we're grateful that you are, because It's much appreciated.
And like I said, any assistance Karen and I can help you rally.
Okay.
Now, you know, we need to,
And we do work good.
You know how helpful he is.
yeah, the Bridget and the So, with that, then I'll catch up with you next time we're in the office and we'll,
Just sort through those
Yes,
numbers so
get
that,
sorted,
yes,
yeah.
so that it's equitable.
yeah.
So we'll see you tomorrow?
Kinda hope so.
And every
I
day?
may be here for the night.
That's what I was gonna say, you're staying late tonight, aren't you?
Just be careful getting home.
Can I get a couple of signatures for
Yes.
a petition that I'd rather not have a blank on the ballot for Judy Hannah for Grand Bureau?
Grand jury.
Can't you just step right in here?
Excuse me.
It's
I don't
editable.
know, are we gonna have an executive session or not? Do we have any?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Because the other thing,
Scott Henry was aware of the need for discussion
sounds good.
and
Because we have to discuss dedication, et cetera. I think we typically, don't sort of technically do that in an executive session, but that we try not to speak openly about it. So if you have any input on that, I'd be happy to hear it. But if you,
we have.
We have the list. that
Yeah, I saw the
Garth
list.
If you will,
Yeah.
get the list. How do you get on that list? You wanna know?
You died.
Lifelong commitment, right?
You can get away with that now. Yeah.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
You can answer.
I can't sign it. No. I can't be an election official either.
I know.
All right,
Oops, water.
So are we ready for an executive session then? Do we have anything else?
Just warrants?
warrants.
Warrants. So I'll make a motion that we approve and sign the warrants as presented.
Second? All in favor?
Stack of warrants, so.
Second warrant. Warrant, payroll warrant 27, 13,441.49. It's that because it includes library. Payroll warrant 29, 10,148.28. Again, that includes library. The board met and actually signed at 28 before. This is payroll warrant 30, this is this week's. 6,439.48. Does not include library. AP warrant 17, 56,351.63. On this warrant is a White Whitney request, which you can't refuse anyway, so it's already being paid, for cordwood for an individual. And on this warrant is a $5,400 payment electronically made to the IRS. We were denied our appeal.
Oh.
The interest, if we waited until today, would have made the amount we owed $5,500. And so I said, pay it. And so we lost that appeal. So in the budget, you will see, under those fees that were, over $8,000 in the current fiscal year in paying those.
Hymex grip and drill, $1,500 for the drill. Who's that, highway department?
What's the account number?
It's Webb, it's. Snazzy little drill.
The backup's over there, Chet, in that pile.
FWN.
And what's Follett School Solutions, do we know?
Never have time to do it. EF. FWN, Max Drill, this is wastewater.
Is that, okay.
They got 6-inch, 45-inch grip drill set. 2 of them, 2 drills and 2 stiffeners. So I'm taking it that whatever they had, it was mounted in concrete, had to be replaced, and so they had to re-drill. Sounds to me like a pump mount. And we did have one of our sludge return pumps go down. So it sounds like they had to cut it out and then they had to drill it, put it back in. In almost perfect conditions, I'm sure. What was the other one you asked?
Follett School Solutions.
I've heard of that before,
Have
so.
you? FOL, it's the,
That's Putney Library.
oh, so it's
those
probably
are-
audio books or something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. And again, traditionally in the past, this board did not see all expenditures going out. There was a warrant for Whitney that you got separate from your accounts payable, that the library stuff you never saw. Cemetery stuff was all signed by the cemetery, not signed by you. So you are seeing all vendors, all money is leaving, which is, in my opinion, the right way to do it.
Kind of
That's it,
curious.
just back up.
I was kind of curious about that one.
Oh, yeah, huh,
What's that one?
it's a school employee.
On-call fire?
No?
I think so.
What's the amount? In 1312?
No,
The rec?
could be.
Is it the rec?
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah,
That's
there's
what
a
it is.
$650 stipend for rec coordination.
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for rec coordination.
Okay, great.
Yeah, we were
Is that
just,
Mike Barrett?
No.
No.
Matt Bristol.
with
Oh,
it.
no.
Yeah, we have, I happen to just be scanning through W-2, $6,500 appears to rate 4 times.
Yeah.
Yeah. As a mount calendar.
Yeah, he coordinates all the, like basketball, that's
Ball
what they're doing right now.
Rec.
And there's a lady that does the concession stand or something.
Yeah, Michelle.
Right,
Yeah.
so,
Thank you.
All right, I'll make a motion that we enter executive session for the purpose of Title I, VSA 313, appointment or employment or evaluation of a public officer and employee.
Okay, second. All in favor?
Aye.
There will be no announcements.
No,
after that.
and be no action.
And we invite Chip and
And Karen,
Karen.
yeah.
Yeah.